Yeah, so there was a side discussion about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. I really recommend a book called, is it The Unwinnable War, or is it Nothing Less Than that teaches you how to...
Three books, so
yeah.
Winning the Unwinnable War, Nothing Less Than Equal, but also What Justice Demands.
What Justice Demands by Ilan Giorno, I think, is a great book to read. About the Israeli-Palestinian conflict and why the Israelis are on the right, and how do you reach that conclusion, and how do you win a war, which is something we forgot. The whole world forgot, by the way. Maybe Putin still remembers, but unfortunately.
But also what Justice Demands does is it puts forward the best arguments for the Palestinians. So it's not a book that only gives you one side. So it says these are the best sides that the Palestinians have, and here is how to evaluate them. These are just, these are not just. So right. It gave me a lot of clarity.
I think as Israelis, it's very important that you educate yourself about this as much as possible, because it really impacts your life on a daily basis. And this guilt that we heard before, or what I think what the kind of the basis of the premises you're holding, are very hard to uproot because of the complexity of the issue. And so learning more about the history and actually what happened and the true history of the Israeli and the roots of this conflict is critical. Okay.
The gentleman has a question.
Yes.
Yes, I have a question. It's on. So I am currently working in the high-tech sector and helping usher along this idea called the metaverse. And so I'm very interested, as we, to basically simplify what the metaverse is let's just call it the next chapter of the internet in a more high-fidelity, 3D interactable way. So from an objectivist point of view, how could we better help social networks and this sort of new realm of technology be one that is essentially better than the ones that we're using today?
So I'll answer first, because then I'll have to leave to catch a plane. So quite often, particularly libertarians, think that technology will change the world. Remember how optimistic they were with Bitcoin or with 3D printing a decade ago. But technology doesn't change the world. Ideas change the world, or ideas tell us where the world is going to go. So imagine the metaverse or something like that in the way it's used in China, for example, with the social credit system and all that stuff. But also imagine it among free people in a situation like, for example, the pandemic, where we relied on this, and it was, we should all say a big thank you to all these companies that make sure that we could go on with our lives. So what to do with big tech is not a particular example in terms of we can do one thing and then big tech is going to be good or bad. All these companies live in a particular culture. And when this culture is dynamic and we use these things to have a good and a positive vision, then it's going to be used for that. When we live in a culture where the point is how to ostracize or how to make sure that everyone follows the line, as it happens in some societies, this is going to be a tool for bad. So I'm always optimistic about technology, because I know it can benefit my life, it can benefit me professionally, in my personal life, but it's not going to change the world. Technology can never change the world by itself. I thought it would some years ago with blockchain and all that stuff. Turns out it's not. So we cannot circumvent the battle of ideas. We cannot circumvent and say, this is going to change the world. It's going to make it more difficult to control in some ways. But again, if we don't win the battle of ideas, the same toxic atmosphere that you see today in social media, you're also going to see it in metaverse. So, but one last thing, what to do with big tech? Always remember that they have the same rights that we have. It's not that, so many people think that, Twitter became too big, so now it's the public space. This is like telling you, you became so successful that now I'm going to take away from you your rights. Like, this is as unjust as it gets. It's like telling, I'm going to punish you because you are very good. It's what runs it, hating the good for being the good. So what to do with big tech and all that? Respect it. Say thank you for the way it has made our life better, but don't think that by itself it's going to change the world. On that happy note, a huge thank you for you for being here. I'm going to use technology and fly back home, and thank you very much. So, good, have fun with Thanks. Yeah. See you in Oslo.
Okay. Maybe to add, thank you, Nikos. Maybe to add, what would you then seed this new space with? And if it's essentially based on ideas, where would you want to add a new breadth of philosophy into this world that's going to be more interactable and more engaging, let's say?
I don't know enough about it to comment, but it's a tool, you know, and you have to identify what values does this make possible? Like, how is it useful? Does it really bring value? And if so, in what ways? Does it make new and better communication possible? I mean, just take something like the internet. It's like there's all sorts of things that have been made possible by that in terms of the speed of communication, the ability for someone in just, you know, rural Kansas in the middle of nowhere to speak to the world in ways that has never been possible. So that opened up forms of communication that are new. So it's a tool, it's a device. So the question is, where is it actually bringing value, and what can you do with it? I don't know enough about it to comment, but I don't know that it's I don't know if it's a significant enough development that it will do something so new that it requires a philosophic perspective on it that's different in some way from, you know, well, what do you think of Twitter or Facebook or email? I mean, or go back, what do you think about, you know, electricity? I mean, going back, every time you get a new technological development, I mean, some things people start to rethink. Genetic engineering, cloning. Like when I was growing up, it was cloning. You know, you're playing God and they're going to clone Hitler. It was always like, yeah, you can clone a guy that looks exactly like Hitler, and that's it. You know, but there are some developments, I think, in technology that do raise new questions for philosophers to have to deal with. But the question is this one of them? I don't know. I don't know enough about it.
Again, and I'm not a metaverse expert, but it sounds to me like it is basically going to carry, as Aaron said, going to carry the same ideas to a new platform. And we're going to experience it in new ways. So I don't think technology by itself will change anything. You know, I use Thoughtful. I don't know if you guys know that app. It's you know, it's an Objectivist, Brian, who's trying to create a good version of social media, and that the ideas there are better, and what people share is trying to be as objective as possible. But again, it's just one drop in an ocean of trying to better ideas get propagated. I spend a lot of time thinking about how we win the war, you know, the battle of ideas. And the only conclusion I can come up with is more people carrying those ideas. Because you'll never know who will have the brilliant idea on how to propagate ideas today with today's technology. You know, Joe Rogan. Like, everybody knows Joe Rogan. Who would have thought that a whatever it's called, UFC guy who interviews people will have so much influence? Or a professor from Canada that talks against woke will become a cultural hero, or Elon Musk, or, you know, those things. You educate people and you hope for the best. That's honestly the only strategy I can come up with, and this is why ARI is you know, doing whatever it can to attract and to then educate, and hopefully educate all the way. I mean, not just the ideas, but how to propagate the ideas. So we have even communication as part of ARU. And then I don't know what is the critical mass you need to have to change the world, but we're working towards it. But, you know. And technology will have a part in it, I'm sure. Because today, to propagate, and this is what makes me very hopeful, because I think great ideas can spread like wildfire today. I mean, yeah.
Books were technology. So, I mean, you know, you go back and the books is a new technology. And it's because it gave people the ability to put on paper and to propagate at scale the word, so to speak. And, but it's just think about what tools are at our disposal and to what uses can they be put. So you know more about that than I do, I'm sure, in terms of like what the functionality is and what's made possible. Because I'm sure that if you're working on things like that, somebody would have to, you run companies, right? So it's like somebody would have to say, this is what's inspiring about this. This is what's so awesome about it. This is so game-changing about it. And even if it turns out, well, I don't know if it's so game-changing, but there has to be a vision. There has to be an excitement. There has to be, this is what, and if it's just, you can have a 3D, in effect, Zoom meeting. It's like, okay, do they need to see the whole me? Is it that, or is it something much, much more than that they're doing, and that's really inspiring? And I don't know.
This is a very interesting question about, you see those interviews before the internet where the reporter is asking, what is that thing called internet? And so
the interwebs.
And the guy says, yeah, you can send an email and it arrives, and it's like, who needs that? And like website, and what would we do with websites? I mean, there's lack of vision on many. But on the other hand, as Aaron pointed out, there's a lot of fads that come and go, and you hear, oh, that's going to change the world, and you never hear about it again. The way I think about it is that, is it really serving a deep human need? And I'm conflicted about the metaverse in the sense that, like, is it really serving a human need for me to walk into a 3D environment and live in it, in a way? I don't know. So maybe I'm too old, as usually, you're too old because my son would love to live in a metaverse. I don't know. I don't feel like it serves a deep human need for me. My son puts those goggles on and he fights those swords. He can bump into walls and he's delighted to. You put that on me for like 2 seconds, I'm disoriented and I just want it off. So for me, it's up in the air if metaverse is serving a real human need. And that's how I think we should think about technology. It's not like NFT. I don't get it. You get it. I don't understand what need it serves. There is something there, I have to say. I mean, the ownership and the fact that there's a registry that says that I own that, there is something there, but I still don't get it. I mean,
the need is fungible. It's very fungible.
That's good.
And I appreciate both of you for shedding light on that. And I think that helps stimulate the approach that I want to sort of shed light on, which is metaverse is really just an environment and a space. And I think ultimately it will be that battle of ideas, which is hopefully to retrain people that everything that we do on our screen-based devices has value. And yet it is, in a sense, quite single-sided in how that's monetized. And I would hope that sort of this next chapter is specifically in the internet where we can understand how it can be a two-way street. And I think the metaverse is just like that gateway, and we don't necessarily know what's on the other side. So
I can't really know what's on the other side, as you call it, because I don't know what the applications of it still are. I can think about like amazing applications, but again, it goes back to the question, what human need does it serve? And I agree with Aaron. I mean, it doesn't replace, it's a container, right, to give you more experiences, giving you more exposure to ideas. The ideas won't change if we don't change them.
Yeah, that's for sure. Like if I had so I give a lot of classroom talks to middle school and high school students about Ayn Rand's novels, and that's one of the things I love most. If I got the opportunity to sort of like be in the room with them and walk around and talk to them or interact with their virtual selves or whatever, that's kind of cool. But what am I saying? So it's like, okay, so they might enjoy that interaction more. They might, as opposed to if I just sort of was there and like, okay, he's this old guy, he's kind of intimidating. And I'm not intimidating, but you will be if you're like 12, and you don't want to ask a question and stuff. But if it's just virtual selves, it's sort of like he's not really there. I don't know, maybe if it made the interaction easier for them, you could walk up to them, they could walk up to you or something like that. And if that could be kind of cool, but then this, because it won't change the ideas. Because what am I saying? Am I saying BS, or am I telling them something that's actually helpful, or just filling their minds with junk? And so, yeah. But I don't want these remarks to be in any way to sort of downplay it. Like I said, I don't know enough about it, and I'm not the person to talk to about technology and like.
Or the adoption of it, yeah.
Yeah.
It's hard to
just,
predict, right?
Yeah. Yeah, but I'm generally, like Nico said, I'm generally enthusiastic about technological developments because one person can say, yeah, this is what we're going to do with it, and somebody else says, why are you doing that? Like, we should be doing this. And the ability for technologists to have the vision to open up new possibilities that other people don't see, they've opened up new possibilities that we can now see. I mean, and then what you do with it is up to the individuals functioning in those areas, and there's not just one vision in one form. So I'm always happy that they open up something new for me to see, because I'd never figured it out.
Okay, more questions, yeah.
Thank you.
I'm gonna draw us back a little bit to politics again, because I have at least I think an interesting question, and I also have an example to kind of wrap it up. When I look at Ayn Rand philosophy, there's a big focus on individualism and individual ideology and perspective and way of life. And yet, when we look at politics, usually, at least where we don't use full democracy when you can vote for as an individual for any decision, we use parties, we use organizations, we use a lot of ways to interact with other people and to cooperate on making our ideals a reality. And usually when you try to work with people, all those differences come to a point where you're disagreeing on something that is too important. And my example for when I was in high school and I started volunteering with the LGBT organizations. LGBT. Oh, LGBT. LGBT. Alphabet Mafia. So I started volunteering there, and really fast I found out that many of the policies some of the organizations are putting on their agenda are things that I don't believe in. And for me, it was hard to find a place where I can still be represented as an LGBT community member and still, for example, as a capitalist or as someone who supports Israel's side on the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. And I see it much worse when it comes to political parties. Today, if you're a capitalist and you...
I would just ask you if you can get to the question.
Yeah, of course. If you look at the parties in Israel and you want to vote for someone who promotes left on things like the conflict or stuff like that, you can't vote to a capitalist party. And when I look at Ayn Rand philosophy, how can I cooperate with other people to, with the differences to get the ideology I want to be reality?
You cooperate with groups where you find real value in the cooperation. So if the idea is, I'm in this group because I guess I'm a member, but I have ideas that are heterodox for that group, and then they don't like me, because it's like, well, why are you in that group? Like, I don't think of myself as a member of a group. So you could say, I'm a member of the group white people. I don't think of myself as a member. I disagree with most white people. I don't like most white people. But maybe I don't like most people anyway. So it's like, it's not, I don't think about groups like that. So it's, am I a member of the white community? I don't even know what that means. Like, I don't like that. I don't think of myself in that terms. So am I a member of the LGBT? I mean, is the question, am I gay? You might say, I'm not. But you could say, yeah, I'm gay. Am I a member of the community? Like, what's that supposed to mean? Does that have certain kind of obligations or expectations, or am I going against my community if I say, yeah, I'm all for people of lesbian, gay, trans, like to have rights and stuff, just like everybody else. They're people, right? They should have rights like everybody else. Do I go to rallies and stuff asking for special favors from the government? No, I don't think I should be doing that. Oh, am I going against my community, my tribe, my team? And it's like, no, I don't think about those. Yeah, it's like, so how do you retain your individual?
Political parties, like he asked.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I didn't get quite the political parties thing.
I think the point is it's not looking at it as I'm gay, so I support the gay agenda, as more as if I'm gay and I want to vote for a right-wing party, and there's none that actually recognize me for who I am and wants me to have my rights, for example.
I still don't quite understand the question, but let me go back to the very first thing you started talking about, because this is what I thought you were getting at, but I'm not sure if it is. Two things. One, how do you retain an individualist perspective in a large-scale society? And the answer to that is the individual rights. So your rights aren't violated if somebody thinks you're a jerk because the way you vote for Israel or whatever, like you've gone against your community. Your rights aren't violated. It's just other people have different values and different perspectives, and that's life. Welcome to the world, right? But the idea of retaining people's individual ability to function and to live and to in a society where lots of people disagree about all sorts of things is individual rights. So as long as force is banned, or the initiation of force is banned from society, yeah, people will disagree about all sorts of things, but build a career, find people that you can have common cause with, and join groups where you really see there's a real value in being in the group, and there's no expectations that I'm going to like shut down my mind if they have expectations. Yeah.
I think my question is more of what happens when all the groups that support my cause are supporting things that I don't believe.
That's what I wanted to ask. Yeah. So. Well, first, it's a tough question, I have to say, because it has to do with evaluating people or moral judgment of people's, activities. And so by going back to what Aaron said, it's rational self-interest that should guide you. What are you trying to promote? So, for instance, Boaz is cooperating with several different groups. We don't agree with those groups but we're saying we are working with you because we agree on this, opening the market on something. So, yeah, do I agree with the fact that you're a religionist or whatever? No, but we are fighting for this cause and this cause only. Now, very easily, it can go to no. Like I think what happened, I'm not really into like Zahut and what happened and how they ran for the Knesset and so on, but it fell apart. And maybe it was good that they fell apart because they couldn't agree on fundamentals. But you can say, no, I'm running with you on the note or the card that we're going to open, I don't know, it was a drug, opening the markets for drugs. And we run on this idea. On the rest, we agree to disagree. And that's rational for me. This is finding for instance, corporations. When we agree on some things and we agree on how not to agree on other things and so on and so forth. So contracts are a reflection of the complicated relationship you can have with someone to promote a specific goal or target while not agreeing on other things. So again, I'm going back to it's tough. And when you're going into a partnership, you say, I support this part of what you're saying. I don't support that part. Are you okay with us partnering on this part? And if it's all open about it, and so you're not hiding anything. For instance, there was always the questions like, why are you cooperating with libertarians? Or, yeah, we don't cooperate with libertarians, and I won't show up to any conference that promotes nihilism or anarchy. Okay, I think it's vicious and it's evil, and I won't share a stage with an evil person that I think wants to destroy the world, right? On the other hand, if they're promoting liberty and they say we respect that we disagree, you guys are objectivists and we are conservatives, but we're here to promote this aspect, which is opening up the market and, you know, individual rights. Yeah. And by the way, I do that, and sometimes it's very embarrassing, where I say, look, I disagree on everything the speakers before me said about abortion. I think it's evil, and I think it's murderous, and I think it's a contradiction of individual rights. I want to say that before I start, because that gives me, I think, legitimacy to stand here and now talk about what I want to talk, not giving sanction to the other things. And by the way, that's my condition when I come to a conference that I know some people are promoting bad ideas. I say I'm not for that. So it's clear. I'm not. The fact that I'm here sometimes can be perceived as sanctioning some of the ideas that were promoted, and I reserve the right to say I disagree with all of it. I'm here to talk about one aspect where we agree on. So you should, again, going back, it's what is in your rational self-interest, as long as you don't betray, you know, the fundamental ideas, and you're not compromising.
And there may not be a group that you can sort of belong to or join common cause with that you think you really have much in common with, and that's just the way it is. And it sounded like you were anti-abortion in what you said.
No, sorry, I'm not anti-abortion. I'm anti what they said about abortion.
Okay.
No. This is on tape. It's dangerous. So somebody
right.
can
clip
it out and say, I'll say something about anti-abortion. No.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think so. Let's bring it back because he didn't ask a
the
question.
beard in the back, and then we'll come up front.
Yeah. No, go back to the guy in the back.
In the black T-shirt, and then you get.
Hey, in the beginning you said that Ayn Rand doesn't believe that there's anything supernatural, you put it. But so how does she explain free will? It seems to me that if only the natural world exists, then how can we are just a bunch of atoms? Then means that we are deterministic, I guess. Then how can we have a free will? And how does she reconcile like free will with? Does she believe that inanimate objects are deterministic and can be predicted?
I think a couple of things there. I would challenge the point that because you're made essentially of atoms in some way, atoms don't have free will, therefore the composite doesn't have free will. I would challenge that. I think entities can have properties that their parts don't. The literature about emergence and so on, emergent properties and things that arise as a result of things being put into certain kinds of combinations, that they have abilities or properties that don't belong to the parts. Ayn Rand's view is definitely that consciousness, or the soul, you call it whatever you like, but consciousness, the faculty of awareness, the mind, is 100% natural. It's a biological phenomenon that we observe in certain kinds of living organisms at a certain level of sophistication with a certain kind of very definite kind of structure. Exactly what structure is required for consciousness to arrive, that's a scientific question, not a philosophic question. The issue about free will is, I think this is an observable feature. It's an observed fact of your own mental life, not one that's to be explained away by a theory. So you're aware of your ability to initiate the actions of your consciousness. Not every one of them, because we know, so take the distinction that you would make between a song that you heard at the store and you can't get it out of your head. It's something, it's involuntary, it comes, God, to get that song out of my head. You're not voluntarily directing these kinds of things, and this is one of the reasons why you can make a distinction between the voluntary and the involuntary. Some things come unbidden, unasked for. You can't get rid of them. Sometimes you can't stop thinking about something, and then it allows you to make a distinction as when am I directing my thoughts, and when am I not? And what sort of things are involuntary, and which sort of things are voluntary. So that's a kind of a basic distinction we're able to draw just empirically, just from introspection, looking into what we can do when we think. That's the reason why there's a question about this issue, is that we're already able to draw that distinction. When it comes to, and if you ask yourself, this is interesting, when you ask yourself, what do you do when you think? when you try to, I think what you do essentially, and maybe it's not that all of what you do, but and this is where you get the sense of it's me directing it. And you feel like you're directing it. You ask yourself questions. I think that's basically what thinking is you ask yourself a question, you send a query, so to speak. Your subconscious, or whatever's stored, kind of pops up a response. Where are my keys? And it pop up, it's like, on the desk? But then it's like, oh, now I know. No, it's like, well, are they on the desk? Well, I'll go look. Okay, they're not on the desk. And it's like, well, where else are they? Oh, maybe you left in the car. It's like something pops up, right? You didn't ask for that specific answer to be coughed up, but you asked the question. So you're guiding your mental processes by asking specific kinds of questions, considering the results that come up, asking different questions if that's not the answer, and you experience yourself as guiding yourself through life. In that regard, and you can distinguish that from things that are non-voluntary. So for her view is that is something that's directly observable. It's a directly observable phenomenon, which is the phenomenon of choice. I mean, that's what free will is all about. It's the phenomenon of choosing between alternatives. And she thinks that's something you observe. It's not something you infer on the basis of some theory. This is a directly observable. And as a result, she takes the observed phenomenon of choice seriously. Now, the question of the problem of free will comes in with thinking about how then do you integrate that observation of self-direction, of choosing between alternatives, with a view about the nature of causality, of cause and effect. And her view is, you need to integrate the experience of choosing, the causal power to initiate a mental action. You need to be able to experience or to integrate that with a wider theory of causation. But her view is it should be a theory of causation that includes that form of causation, because she regards free will as a form of causation, like self-causation. But she does not think that it involves some special supernatural element. I mean, that is a major view in that debate, is that Sam Harris has this view, lots of other people have this sort of view. It's Baron Holbach, if you go back to the kind of Enlightenment period, is the same kind of view, is that matter functions deterministically. I don't even think physicists really think that in the end, in terms of does all matter at every level function deterministically? I don't think that's the majority view anyway. But does that mean you have free will? That's an open question. I don't think the physics decides that. I don't think this is a question for physics, actually. It's a question for philosophy, because it's something that's directly observable. But the trick is at conceptualizing that, which means integrating it with a theory of how other things work in the world. But I think as scientists and as thinkers, we have to be open to, there are more forms of causation than simply kind of mechanical, one and only one result can arrive from antecedent causes or something. Why can't there be more than one? Why can't there be an entity with the capacity to choose between alternatives that aren't already dictated by antecedent factors? That's certainly what we seem to observe. But that's a long, and I think thorny issue. I think usually things get really tricky when you get down to like fundamental issues like that, where two things are difficult. You seem to have a directly observable experience that everybody seems to be fully aware of, right? Choosing between alternatives. And yet you have to try to integrate that with the theory of causation, but I think one shouldn't prejudice the view that all causation must be like, billiard balls or whatever. That's a long conversation, but if you have a follow-up, and then if you want to add.
And I just want to add one thing. What I don't understand is the need to break the rules and suddenly bring an unknown entity to existence that then needs to explain this part. I mean, it happened every time in science where we saw something that didn't make any sense or does not integrate with everything we know. And then somebody came in and integrated that into a wider theory that explained everything. And they never made the leap. Every time it's like God was relegated every time from explaining things because...
The gaps, they called it.
What?
Yeah, the God
they
of
called
gaps.
God of the gaps.
God is what we stick to fill the gaps.
Oh, the gaps, yes, exactly.
Oh, it's God.
Yes, exactly. So I think in free will as well, why fill the gap with someone called God? and not just wait for someone to really integrate that into. I think we already have some, and I'm pointing to you for some reason when I'm talking about physics. We already have some clue from quantum mechanics. It's not that simple. I mean, something's going on. You know, you observe a slit and suddenly the results change. What? You know, a randomness in the level of like we can explain. You know.
But then it's also true that if there might be randomness at the quantum level, but does that mean it works all the way up to like making choosing between?
And does that explain consciousness? I don't know.
Yeah.
But you're already seeing clues that we don't know, and somebody will maybe one day fill in the gaps.
Because there are two sort of levels of description. One is, I always liked, and I don't think this is quite I don't think this is quite the objectivist perspective, but I've always respected this position that John Locke, the Enlightenment philosopher, put forward. He mentioned it. He just says something. He says something like, "Can matter think?" I don't know. I leave that to other people. What I know is that I have ideas, and I have to direct my mind. So you guys work on that. Because I'm paraphrasing and adding a little bit, but that's a little bit part of the way I think about this is that because it has to do with the hierarchy of knowledge. It's like what you know as directly observed versus what you can infer once you have some sort of theory is that you have to then reintegrate, but not eliminate. So you have to integrate facts with the other things you know and your other theoretical commitments, right? But not eliminate as a result, because it is a fundamentally observable thing. It's just as scientific. I think it's just as scientific as you put your hand on a ball and you move it. How do you know you're moving that ball? And it's like the only answer to that question is I'm moving it. I mean, I don't know what else you say. It's a basic observed fact, and I don't arrive at that from a theory. I don't arrive at that as an inference. It's a directly observable phenomenon. And she looks at free will that in the same way. I'm selecting between alternatives, and I know what I'm doing, and I know why I'm doing it, and I can tell you about it. You know, and it's at that level. So it's a fact that needs to be integrated, not a fact that needs to be explained away because we look at the inanimate world and we find it functions in different ways.
Just to follow up on that, if you accept Ayn Rand's philosophy and you also believe in God, can you believe in God that doesn't do any supernatural acts and also be consistent with her philosophy?
I would say, what is the object of the belief then? So if the idea is, you know, there's a supernatural consciousness in the sky that gives us orders and creates the world or whatever, yeah, that's completely incompatible with objectivism for sure. So any kind of traditional view of what God is totally incompatible with objectivism for all sorts of reasons. But if you have some notion of God that is not supernatural?
Yes, it's a word that describes a source of values, certain values that you believe.
Then you're not talking about a God anymore. So then you're talking about something that's real and meaningful, but something which you elevate because of your perspective on how valuable it is. It's like you could just say something like, what would I say? I would never say this, and Ayn Rand wouldn't like me to say this. Ayn Rand is my God, right? Well, I would never say that. I know this is on recording, sorry. But I'm just trying to find, so this is a real person, right? This is nothing supernatural. But you could use that expression to say, like, this is my highest, this is the thing I value the most, it's most important to me, or nature is my God, you know, because it's a wonderful place. Yeah, but then you're no longer talking about God. You're using the term metaphorically as some sort of elevated highest value.
Definition? You're saying it's a different definition?
I say it's a metaphor. Yeah. Because you can use the term figuratively. God damn it. You know, it's like you just.
Hi. So, do you have enough?
Can I just point out
small detail, you can note that there is a different direction behind this question. Usually, we take the knowledge we accumulate, we build on it in order to accumulate more knowledge, while we know that there is a lot of unknowns. Now, the different psycho-epistemological direction take the unknown in order to decompose what we know and to shake it. So this is two basic tendencies that you can see as a motivation behind these questions. And this is also the answer to Tal. Why do you need to invoke some unexistent entity that nobody can define? Why do you have to bring it to the game, since it have no function anyway? You cannot define it. It doesn't really help you. So it doesn't come to help you. It's come to dishelp in a way. So sorry for barging in. Go ahead.
That's a good perspective. Here you go.
Okay. Do you think there's any value in convincing or exposing other people about right ideas as a non-educational person?
So you're not an educational
I'm not an educational person. It's not my goal.
Who are you trying to convince?
Just other people.
Other people?
In conversations, when some idea pops out and I have conflict against it.
The context really matters. This is why I'm going to ask you again. I mean, you're talking about, like, let's say we're having dinner, Shabbat dinner, and there's some guests, and somebody says, I don't know, something about, we need more power in the Histadrut, or the unions, okay? And you're like, oh my God, no, right? And you want to respond. Or something like that, or?
So there's any value in trying to convince other than just saying, I don't agree?
Yeah. So that's where I would say the answer is contextual. Value for whom?
For me.
For you.
Yeah.
So let me ask you. Is that person important to you?
Is that person important?
Yeah, they want you to use another microphone, I guess.
Give me my microphone back.
Yeah. Is that person meaningful to you? Are they important to you?
Let me say no.
So why bother?
I think the answer for my question is no, but I wonder when you talk about like spreading the ideas, what's the importance of it?
So here's where I would give you if you want to, let's say, be an intellectual, right? And you want to practice on that person. And you say, I'm going to take somebody that doesn't agree with me. I'm going to see how effective I am in trying to convince them. Then I would say, go for it, right? But always, again, go back to the rational self-interest in everything you do. You have limited time on this earth. You're young, but still it's limited. Ask yourself, what is the purpose of me doing something? And the answer, yes or no, it depends on the value that is, the rational value that is at play here. So if you say, no, I am not an intellectual, you have no obligation to propagate any ideas. I mean, if you want to be a scientist and you just want to do your biology, why talk about philosophy with people? Even if you don't agree with them, just let them go. A lot of objectivists make the error of reading Atlas Shrugged and then seeing the light and thinking that everybody needs to see the light. I made that mistake, and I lost a lot of friends in the process. I don't recommend it. First, you won't succeed because it takes a lot to change somebody's mind, and they need to be actually, who taught you those ideas? You did.
I actually agree with what you said so far, but that's what I'm actually doing. Like, when I'm convinced completely in something, I don't practice it. That's it. I'm convinced.
Yeah.
But I'm saying that as opposed to, like what you said, is spreading the ideas.
Is what?
Spreading the ideas.
Spreading the ideas. Yeah. So what about it?
No, I think I agree with what you said, but I thought it's kind of conflict with what you said.
Oh, no, you should, I'm paid to spread ideas. You're not. That's the difference. So
and you've devoted yourself to it.
And I
so
devoted.
like,
I'm interested in that. I mean, I like doing this.
there's no duty at all to spread objectivism. There's no duty to spread ideas. There's no such thing as duty. Duty is an irrational concept. The idea is, what are your goals? And if your goals could be like, I'd like to change my brother's mind. You know, I think he's on the wrong track, and he's important to me, and I think it's important. You know, like, I don't need to proselytize necessarily, but it's why does proselytize even come up? Because that's often how people behave. But it's like, what are you trying to achieve? And if it's like, I want to move my brother or whatever it is in a better direction, then you have a value to achieve. If you're at a dinner table with a lot of people around and somebody makes a comment that you disagree with, sometimes it's in your own self-interest to say, yeah, I don't agree with that. It's partly out of self-respect, but it also depends on the context, right? But then sometimes who you want to. You want the other people to hear you, not the person who made the comment. Like I find this, so like you take on Facebook. So let's say I post an article that I've written on Facebook or something like that. And so I write some things on Stoicism, ancient Greek philosophy. And boy, those Stoics become very unstoic really fast when I'm criticizing this, and they get really triggered and really nasty, and they lose all their equilibrium. But when I respond to something like this, like, this is all BS, you don't know anything about Stoicism, you're an idiot, whatever like that, and I usually don't respond to that kind of stuff, but if it's a little better, but still kind of nasty, the people, I respond often, I don't always do it, but I respond because other people are watching the thread, a lot of other people that are interested in Stoicism, and when you come across and you say something like, was there an aspect that you disagreed with? What was it? What was it that led you to think this? Already that brings it into an intellectual sort of like, you're asking them, well, what reasons did you have to think that this was not accurate or something? And then it's like, oh, I didn't expect to have to give reasons. Damn it. And then, but sometimes I'll say it and I say, no, because, or it's something like a free will, like, because the Stoics are determinists. And so if somebody says, well, it seems like you need a supernatural thing because otherwise we're just atoms doing stuff, right? And then you say, well, this is how I look at the issue. And already it has a sort of a calming effect. And then it's like what they're seeing is, this is what it looks like to be an intellectual. It means to provide reasons, to engage with reason, and not with a little nasty little quip or something like that. And the people watching that thread or the debate started to go, yeah, okay. And every once in a while you see people kind of liking a comment you made because, okay, so there are people out there lurking watching this. And so sometimes the engagement is for the other people and not the person who...
Yeah, I agree. I think that's the difference between the professional intellectuals and the intellectual professionals.
Yeah. And I want to go back to the point. There's no duty to fix the world. I mean, let me ask you a question, because I tend to ask myself, it's like, can you imagine an objectivist society? And then people say, oh yeah, of course, everybody's free. No, really, can you imagine a world where people are rational and going by self-interest and being introspective enough to understand who they are and what they want? How will that society look like? And one thought experiment is, will there be marriages? Wow, that's a tough question, right? I don't know. Can you answer that question?
Will there be marriages?
Yes.
If people decide to get married?
Some, right? Would it be as common as it is today? I don't know. How will people behave? Will there be? How will education look like? And so, I think again, what I'm trying to say is, if you really understand objectivism, it's you should live your life to the best of your ability, and to try. I think about it romantically as like living your heroic life. I mean, trying to be as heroic as possible to really live a life of full meaning, and that's it. So it's not, let's fix the world and everybody needs to
It's
agree
about
with us.
embodying your values.
Embodying your values, exactly.
Yeah,
And,
because that, irrespective of which screw the world. I mean, if the world goes in a bad direction, and it'll go in a bad direction. I mean,
we'll go somewhere else free.
Yeah.
You know, honestly, it's like, yeah, America goes down the tank, you know, and becomes totalitarian. I'll move somewhere else.
Yeah.
And so we need to get rid of this. And a lot of, by the way, objectivists look at AI as like, how are you going to fix the world? So really, do you think that's how it's going to play out? That, you know, one day everybody will understand? And no, it's an educational, long process of that assimilates into society in so many different ways, and people just need to learn how the Enlightenment came about and how long it took and how many different ways it actually spread into different domains and so on. So take out all of this. Let's change the world. Let's make the change. You know, everybody objectivists and give that up. Leave it to the experts, by the way. That's another thing. You made the distinction between professional intellectuals and intellectual professionals. We should respect, like if you go to the doctor, right? So you respect their knowledge. They know what they're doing. I don't. That's why I don't treat myself. And people, for some reason, don't have the same respect for yeah. So having respect to the people that really know what they're talking about and having them educate correctly and so on.
And I always push too hard on one thing, so I want to come back a little bit, is because so many people, when they read Ayn Rand, they figure, this is really important. Like, people should know about this. Like, you'll benefit from this. And then they often feel like every time somebody conflicts with them, they have to go speak up. And Ayn Rand was like, you do not have to do that. This is not what you should do. So I tend to push more against that. But I do think it is in one's rational self-interest to stand up for what you believe in. Right. And that's an issue of integrity. It's an issue of rational self-interest. But context matters. You don't run into a church to preach atheism. It's not the way it works, or like, you know, run into the kibbutz. It's about individualism. But it's about engaging in that when you think it can make a difference, and when you think there's a value to you in doing it personally. And I think even if you're not God help us if only professional intellectuals are out there standing up for the ideas that they believe in. So I think it's in everybody's self-interest to stand up for rational ideas, for the true and the good. And one should embody those. And sometimes that's uncomfortable. It's not a duty, it's self-interest.
There's a lot of pride in standing up for your own ideas. So standing up and saying, I disagree violently with what was said, and sitting down is sometimes so rewarding. I mean, just everybody claps and, you know, and everybody, and I say, and I disagree. That's it. And I find that very rewarding for myself, just to know that I have the courage to say, I don't go with the herd here. So if you feel like in a context, like a social context, everybody's, you know, saying something, and you, say, I disagree. And by the way, the good people, what I found, the good people that are really interested. I remember it was after I read Atlas Shrugged, we had like a fight over dinner, blah, blah, blah. And then 2 days later, one guy that just moved from Israel to Atlanta came back and said, you know, you said something about, and I said, you know what, from everything I said that evening, this one guy that said nothing in the corner of the table was listening. And I didn't even notice who's listening. And he's the only guy that so pay attention to who is motivated, because if they're not motivated, as Aaron said, usually the person who's attacking you or saying something, they're not motivated to change their mind. They're motivated to fight or some whatever. So see who's motivated to actually be convinced.
And if you're interested in doing a bit more of this, try it out in more comfortable circumstances where you're not so it's not so heated and nasty, but it's just sort of disagreement. The other thing is don't. There's another command. Yeah. But I'll put it this way though. It's don't be afraid of not. So you should. There's two different kinds of things. One is when I disagree with something, but I know that I myself don't have a worked out. I don't fully understand the view to explain and to be able to successfully defend my position, and so I don't say anything. That's fine. there's no rule about that. You could say, okay, I was going to speak up and I didn't. Why? Or because I don't feel like I know it well enough. And okay, that's good. Maybe I should look into that. If it's important to me to figure out, am I right about this one or am I in the wrong? Am I the baddie? So am I the one that's in the wrong or what? Do I have this right? And should I have a better understanding of this? And if you think that's true, look into it more before engaging. But also, I think don't be so worried that you disagree and somebody just like trounces you in the argument. It's like, no, well, what about this and what about that and how about this and that? And they don't know the answer to that. That's okay. What are you, some idiot or something? No, it's just like I don't have it all worked out yet, but I have a viewpoint about it. I don't know how well founded it is, but it's what I think. And it's just, there is something, I think there's something important about just sort of standing up for yourself. Yeah.
Okay, so we do the last question. Anyone has a last question? Yes.
Oh, yeah.
We'll go back to you.
It occurs to me that some ideologies are so essentially and grossly evil that it would be a mistake to admit that they have a point. And my question is, if that's correct, where should we draw the line between those ideologies that we are willing to concede that they have a point and those which we consider intolerable? And I suppose that some examples could be communists. Suppose we consider the Communist Party in Russia. We're not saying, oh, well, the Tsarist regime was dreadful, so communists have a point. And it goes back to something that you said, Tal, regarding the BLM movement. It seems to me that the BLM movement is a radical form of evil, and the historical issues that they use are just a pretense. They want to destroy America. This is what they want. They want to instill guilt. They want to instill some sort of neo-Marxism by their own admission. Should we really accept the idea that they have a point and we should...
I didn't say accept. I think if you want to truly understand what you're fighting against, I think, and especially if you're an intellectual, I didn't do that research. Ankar did, right? What I mentioned. You need to dive into where is this all coming from, and why. People are not born evil and with horns, and they want to destroy the world because they're devils. They came to a conclusion based on some reasoning. And if you want to be able to attack that reasoning, you have to do what is called the philosophical detection of where it's coming from and the logical progression that they've made to the point where you get to their premises, right? And yeah, I agree with you. There are people that like their premise is wrong and the whole chain of reasoning is completely wrong, and there's no merit in any argument whatsoever. But I think it's brilliant to say, where is BLM coming from? How did it originate? How did it rise? Why is it gaining so much? And you go back and say, you know what? There's some roots in the history of the United States that give rise to an argument with merit that says that America is still dealing with racism. There was no reckoning, right, or really a moment of reckoning. And I think what Ankar did, he said, think about Nazi Germany. It reckoned with its Nazi past by really pushing out every remnants of Nazism from itself. They ostracized them. It was shameful to even mention. Now, if you go in the South, it's not shameful to say Confederate flag. Here it is.
Right,
but so I just want to just close the whole point. If you're a true intellectual and you want to fully understand the full context of what you're dealing with, I think it's it's necessary to really go and break down the whole thing and find the roots where you say, I can sort the good from the bad. And if you I sort this out, you're so much more powerful in your ability to then attack them and burn them to the ground and burn their conclusions to the ground, because you show where the logical chain breaks.
Yeah, and let me
and maybe you can say.
Yeah, let me say something else too. Is you have to differentiate also between the sorting the good and the bad. Is you have to differentiate between do the leaders of the BLM movement? Yeah, they kind of have a point. Is that what's being said, or is it so the Black Lives Matter movement is much wider than the leadership? Yeah, I think the leadership is corrupt, and there's a respect in which they're playing on things. But I have high school friends who are like they put the BLM up in their yard and stuff, and it's like they're part of that sort of wider cultural movement. Then you have to ask, is there something true that they're tapping into? Is there something true that they're bringing up, or at least plausibly true that they're bringing up and appealing to? And I think the answer is yes. There is something true that that they're tapping into and pointing out. I think, but I think there's a lot that's just corrupt about the movement. False. I wouldn't say like I wouldn't put it as the leaders have a point or something like that. But there's a wider cultural movement around this than the leadership and just the open power lust of the
maybe the
leaders.
BLM is a difficult example because what I understand from what you're saying, Dr. Smith, is that it's a kind of a nebulous kind of movement. It has different parts of let's say solidity within it. The hardcore may be insane, but the periphery might be not as bad. But nonetheless, it seems to me that there are certain cases where the right thing to do when you would comment about a certain ideology is to come out of the gate shooting and saying these people are the racists that they blame others in being, and not giving them any credit.
But who is the they? So I think people who are honest, non-corrupt, more conventional, are more likely to say, yeah, Black Lives Matter, because frankly, Black lives do matter, right? So it's sort of like, but what is it they're tapping into? Are they tapping into some sort of racial hatred, or are they tapping into, yeah, I mean, I wouldn't want to be on, like, they might be thinking, like, I don't want to be on the side like, oh, what, so they don't matter? It's like, of course they matter. But it's like, so what are the various elements that are involved in a wider cultural push, where, hashtag BLM or whatever, they're behind that. It's what elements are they finding true and valuable, or what resonate with them, versus I can use this as a tool to seek power. But
I think when you asked it again, I realized I think you're conflating the research and understanding with the attack strategy. I didn't suggest that you need to come and appease anyone in BLM. No, you should come with guns blazing to say your conclusions are wrong and it's disastrous, and I think you're pointing in the wrong direction. But if you want to be really powerful, do the research and tell them, look, it's true that, and I don't agree with the Confederate flag bearers who are saying, no, they're wrong as well. Then your ability to really change minds grows up. And I'm not saying anything about the strategy of how to go out and attack them. So we're closing. I just want to say a couple of words. First, I want to thank Boaz and Jonathan for organizing all of this. Thank you so much. And for all the hard work that you're doing on an ongoing basis to keep this flame alive. It's still a small flame in Israel, but hopefully it will grow over time. And another thing I wanted to say, again, our mission, what we are trying to do is to attract anyone who wants to learn more and deepen our understanding and integration of objectivism. It doesn't matter if you want to be a professional intellectual or intellectual professional. I urge you to come, and even an auditor, to the Ayn Rand University. Take our courses. They're brilliant, and they're on Zoom, and you can take one course. It requires several hours a week, not more than that. So yes, you can do it while you're working full time or studying somewhere else.
And we have some OAC students here in the room, and
they can vouch for what I'm saying. Yeah. So use our resources. People don't know that we have an app called the Ayn Rand University, where most of the objectivist corpus is there. but also come study with us. That's what we're here for, and use it. And thank you very much for coming today.
Yeah, thanks for your questions.